Classical languages of India. First of all, what is a language? Language is a means by which we communicate orally. When we say writing, we talk about script. Talking about classical, when I say something is classical, we refer to its standardization. That is the standard. And the origin of the idea of classical languages is based on the idea of a root language. Over a period of time, on the basis of speech, a number of languages have evolved and they are hybrid languages. Hybrid or those languages which are formed by intermingling of one or more languages, such as Urdu. The Urdu was not a language which was brought by the Turks in India. No, it was not. Urdu was a language which emerged because of the agglomeration, because of the mingling of Hindavi or Hindustani, spoken in the Awadhi region, northwestern Uttar Pradesh, and Persian. So when people they came together, they speak, they borrow words also. And it is said that probably in the military camps, or some believe the origin of Urdu in the Deccan region, where Persian was spoken, and many intellectuals after Muhammad bin Tughlaq's transfer of capital experiment went to the Deccan region. So these are hybrid, or these are those languages which have evolved over a period of time. But then there are those languages which are known to be root languages, or which are the languages before which nothing existed. So when we talk about classical languages in Europe, in the Mediterranean region, Greek and Latin, they are said to be two of the root languages or classical languages. Later, when the knowledge emerged of various areas of the world, then the Chinese Mandarin, the Chinese, this, and then Arabic. Mandarin is a script, so let's write Chinese. Arabic and Sanskrit, they were also accorded the status of classical languages, of having the highest level of historical antiquity. Highest level of historical antiquity. The idea behind according this status to a language is to preserve the originality which may have died down, because it is believed that many of the classical languages are dead, because the product languages or the languages which have emerged now are in common use. For example, today we don't find people speaking Sanskrit, although we have speakers and users of Tamil, Telugu, Odia, Kannada, all of them, the other classical languages. So one of the idea behind giving a classical language status is to identify those languages who have an independent origin. So very important. They have an independent origin, and then they have developed. They have a rich history of historical development. They have a rich history of historical development. Now let us understand. We know that the last language which was given a classical status was 2014 Odia. So let us understand what are the criterias of identifying or segregating a language as a classical language. First, high antiquity means it has to be old, of its early texts recorded history over a period of 1500 years to 2000 years. It should also have an independent body of ancient literature texts, which is a valuable heritage maintained by a generation of speakers. It should not be derived from any other language. It should have its own literary traditions. Then we find that the literary tradition has to be original, not borrowed from any other speech community. For example, when we say Maithili or we talk about Pali, Pali is derived from Prakrit. So they are derived languages. Hence, they cannot be accorded this status. Classical languages should be distinct from modern, and hence there can be discontinuity between the classical language and the later offshoots. For example, from Sanskrit, we find that from the Hindustani Hindavi or Hindi that we speak today is derived. So maybe now there is very less resemblance between Hindi and Sanskrit, but there is a definite chain of lineage from Sanskrit to these languages. For example, Prakrit to Marathi. Marathi is derived from Prakrit. And Prakrit is a language which also has its roots in other languages such as Sanskrit. Now, what are the benefits besides its acknowledgement or its separate status? Two major annual international awards for scholars of classical languages is reserved. So, an acknowledgement for their contribution in this field. A center of excellence for studies is set up for each of the classical languages. For instance, center of Sanskrit, center of Tamil, center of Telugu, all of them have to be set up. And the UGC is requested to start with at least, in the central universities, a certain number of professional chairs for the classical languages. So we find all types of academic, educational, and also promotional support being provided by the government for those who want to work in these fields of classical languages. So currently, as we say, we have 6: Kannada, Sanskrit, then we have Tamil. In fact, Tamil was the first, then Sanskrit came up. We have Telugu, we have Malayalam, and finally we have Odia. Now, talking about Sanskrit, Sanskrit belongs to a Indo-European language family. In fact, the word Aryan itself is a linguistic term. The early speakers of Sanskrit, which is an offshoot of the family of Indo-European language. So I was saying that Sanskrit has a lot of similarity with ancient Iranian language, which has lent credence to the fact that the Aryans had come from outside. So it forms the roots of various scripts such as Devanagari, Sharda script for Northern Kashmir, Bengali, Gujarati. So we find that Sanskrit is the root language. Now, with respect to Sanskrit also, the Sanskrit of Vedic times, the Vedic Sanskrit, which was non-corrupt original Sanskrit, which was brought by the Aryans, and the Gupta Sanskrit, which was the classical Sanskrit, is very different. So classical Sanskrit of Gupta age, it has definitely borrowed words. It has borrowed and also contributed to the development of various languages. So Gupta age is known as the classical age of Sanskrit languages, because a number of classical works, prose, poetry, drama, all of them, scientific works were presented in the Gupta age. So we find that in Sanskrit, the early form of literature was a didactic oral literature in the form of Vedic literature. Didactic means which influences the thought process. Didactic, which expects the reader or the receiver to behave in a particular way. Then we have epics also, Ramayana, Mahabharata. We have Abhigyan Shakuntalam by Kalidas. We have important works in science also, such as Aryabhatiyam, Panch Siddhantika by Varahamira. So all of these works are in Sanskrit. But again, we have to understand that the Sanskrit of Vedic times was very much influenced from the Indo-European tradition, whereas the Sanskrit of the Gupta times borrowed a number of words, hence it is considered to be more Indian than the Aryan Sanskrit. Now talking about Tamil, Tamil considered a root language of the Dravidian family, the oldest surviving classical languages, one of the oldest in the world, which is written in the Brahmi script. It also borrows a lot from Sanskrit and Vatteluttu script. And we know that the Sangam age, the Sangam literature in the post-Mauryan age is the earliest exponent of Tamil. And in the post-Sangam age, we find that a number of Tamil epics, especially Sila Padikaram, Mani Mekalai, all of them. And then with the rise of Tamil Bhakti movement, Alvars and Nayanar saints, they have composed their hymns in Tamil language. So we find that later on in the 19th century, Tamil versus Sanskrit debate emerged as to which of the languages is more antiquity. Now, with respect to Tamil, we find that many of the words in Tamil are similar to the words spoken by the Brahui tribe in the present day northwest India, especially in the Pakistan region, the tribe. Hence, many say that the speakers of Tamil were are originally residents of Harappan civilization. And when the Aryans came, they pushed them first to northern India and then south of Vindhyas to the Tamil region. The earliest contact with the Tamil world was established during the time of Mauryas, when we see that Chandragupta Maurya and later Bindusar tried to conquer the areas, and then it was successfully done also by Bindusar and it was confirmed by Ashok. So Tamil is a very important classical language, and the Tamil versus Sanskrit divide, the Dravidian versus Aryan race divide, or the North versus South debate has erupted on multiple occasions in the politics of India. Now, talking about another language, Kannada, also a Dravidian language, which has evolved from Kadamba script. And here we again find that the Kannada language was patronized by the Rashtrakuta rulers. The Rashtrakuta kings were the first to patronize it, to use it on an official basis. So they were the first. We also find that Kannada, the use of Kannada was specially also promoted during the time of Vijayanagar kingdom. Krishnadev Raya, though himself a prominent literary figure in Telugu, promoted Sanskrit and Kannada also. So we find that King Amogh who was known more for his literary pursuits than for his military warfare, his important work, Kabiraj Marg, a very important prose work, was also in Kannada. Vachana literature. Vachana literature we find in South, the Jaina Vachanas are there. Mudra Manjusha by Kempu Narayan. So these are some of the important Kannada works. Telugu. Telugu is classified as also a Dravidian language. And Telugu is written in three dialects: dialect of Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, and Rayalaseema dialect. Dialect here it means how you speak. So dialect here it means regional variations in speech. Some of the famous works: Raj Shekhar, Charitramu by Kandukuri Veerasalingam. We have Mahaprasthanam by Srirangam Srinivasa Rao. So we have to understand some of these major works, some of these important works which can be asked in your prelims examination. Malayalam, again a Dravidian language, evolved from Vatteluttu script Brahmi, Sanskrit and Tamil lingual lexicon. So we find that some of these languages may have been inspired, but because of its historical antiquity, they have been assigned the status of classical languages. So we find Oru Majutali by Ulur SP is a very famous work. You can go through all these works, very famous works. And then the classical language Uriya, which is also classified not as a Dravidian language. So here is a catch. It can be asked. It is an Indo-Aryan language which evolved from Kaling and Brahmi script. And the very famous work Ram Vibhana by Arjun Das is in Uriya. Uriya dance is also a classical dance. So sometimes it would be honest to say that political considerations also go into classifying the language as classical languages. Recently, there is a demand, high demand for according similar status to Marathi. Although it does not classify into many of the criterias, but there is a demand. Because Marathi also has its rich genre of literature going back to the Bhakti movement and even before that. Amrut Sanatan by Gopinath Mohanty is also a very prominent Uriya work.